In this video, we're going to review how to use Photoshop to create a basic wireframe document. And we're going to focus in particular on setting up guidelines so we can implement a grid system. We're going to assume we're using the 960 grid system, which comes in 12 and 14 column variations, and it defines 940 pixels of content, 940 pixels wide, with 10 pixels of gutter on either side of the design. Now, for demonstration purposes, we'll focus in on a 12-column grid system, but to use a 16-column, we just need to use slightly different values when we set up our guidelines. Remember, with any grid system online, we're focused in particular on columns, on the vertical lines. We always want to apply more control and more precision to how our widths are set up than our heights, and that's the main reason for that. To get started here, we're going to go ahead and create our first guideline, and we're going to use those guidelines down the road to guide us as we create boxes and shapes that represent our wireframes. Now, in order to do this, we need to use the rulers in Photoshop. And if you're looking around and you don't see rulers in your version, it may be that you don't have them active. And so to turn them on, you need to simply tap the Command-R key combination or Control-R if you're on a PC. I'm going to do that now, and you'll see that actually I lose my rulers because they're already on. But Command-R or Control-R is a toggle combination, so I just tap it again, and that brings my rulers back. Now, the other issue that may come up is we have here a 1200 pixel wide document. It's 2400 pixels tall. And you may have a similar document, but you're looking at your ruler values and they're just not matching up. Now, in this case, they are. Maybe your values are a lot smaller, though. What could be happening is even though you've created a document in pixels, your rulers are still set up to measure things in inches. And anytime we're doing web design, everything's a lot easier if we switch everything over to pixels. So in order to do that, all you need to do is tap the Command K or Control K key combination. That's going to open up the Global Preferences window for Photoshop. And we're actually going to scroll down here to the Units and Rulers subsection. And we're going to check out the units values. Now, I'm all set. My rulers are set to pixels. You can see here, though, there are a number of different possibilities. And type as well is set to pixels. And I'm going to leave both those values just as is, so I'll cancel out of here. Okay, with my values confirmed, with my rulers set up, I'm ready to go ahead and create my first guideline. So I'm going to move my tool set over here on the left a little bit over to get it out of the way. And now I can click and drag from my rulers over onto my document. And I'm just going to hold down my mouse or my left trackpad button as I do this, and then move this right over onto the document. As soon as I release, there I have my guideline. Now, if I'm not happy with the placement, I can always move a guideline after I've created it. In order to do that, I want to make sure I'm using the Move tool, which in my tool palette here is the very first one. So I can either click on it, or I can use the keyboard shortcut V to select the Move tool. And now I can easily move things around, including my guidelines. So if I hover over this, you'll notice the cursor changes, indicating I can move it left or right, and then I can click and drag it in either of those directions. Now, you'll notice as I move this guideline that a little window pops up showing me my exact pixel value for that particular location. That's a really handy indicator, and unfortunately, it's limited to CS6. So if you have an earlier version of Photoshop, you won't be seeing that value. What you'll notice in either case, though, is as I move this, even if I'm very careful, I'm jumping ahead by 4 or 5 pixels every time I move my cursor. And that's not very good for the kind of precision work we're trying to do now. So an easy way to get more control, more precision over what's happening is to zoom in on the document. And I'm going to tap the Z key to move over to my magnifying glass. And because I'm in Photoshop CS6, I'm going to actually click and then drag over here. Whoop! Click and drag the other way, and that's going to allow me to zoom in on the area. If you have an earlier version of Photoshop, you can actually just go to the zoom tool, either click and drag a square over the area that you want to focus on, or just keep pressing the mouse button or the left trackpad button over the area you want to zoom in on. So now that I'm zoomed in, I'm going to just scroll over a little ways here, and I'm going to hit V to move back to my Move tool. And now as I move my guideline left and right, you'll see not only can I move it to the nearest pixel, but I'm actually ending up with some decimal values here as well. That's a little bit frustrating too, because I want to stick to pixels. Well, an easy way to not only stick to integer values, whole integer values, but also to get a little more control over my movement is to hold down the Shift key as I do this. What that'll do is snap the guideline to the different hash marks on my ruler here. So for example, between 300 and 350, I have 4 different hash marks. So that means if I hold down Shift, I can go from 300 to 310 to 320, 30, 40, all the way over to 50. So down to the nearest 10 pixels, I can move this left and right, which is exactly the kind of control I want for what I'm doing. So if I wanted to create another guideline, all I do is come back to my ruler, click and drag it over, and I have my second guideline. Now the trick is, where do I actually put these guidelines? Well, I want them in very particular places, based both on the 960 grid system and based on the fact that I have a document here that's 1200 pixels wide. Well, to help us out, I've created a document, and you can actually download this from the course site in Lore. Let's go ahead and open that up for a second here so we can see where it is. So I'm inside of Lore in Web Publishing. I'm going to go over to Resources to grab this document. And it's the guide placement for 12 and 16 column 960 grids. So I'll click on that, and I'll click to download. Looks like I've already grabbed it a couple times, and I'll pop it up here. So what this document gives us is the pixel values that we want to use for each one of our guidelines. And each line in the document represents a different column. And so we need 2 guidelines for each column. In this case, the left guideline is going to be at 130, the right guideline at 190, 210, 270, and so on all the way down. If I wanted to use a 16 column grid, I would just use the values listed under there. I went ahead and printed this document out so I have it at the ready. And just remember, it's not only assuming a 960 grid, but it's also assuming a 1200 pixel wide document. And so that's going to mean that all of our guidelines are going to be lined up just right so that our web page is centered on this 1200 pixel document. Let's come back into Photoshop and fine-tune the ones we've already created here. We know we want our first one to go to 130, so I'll hold down Shift and move this on down to 130. And I know I want my second one at 190 rather, so I'll move that to 190. My third one's going to be to 210, so I'll click and drag, hold down Shift. That snaps to my hash marks on the ruler. Move that to 210. And my next one is going to be at 270, so I'll jump over to 270. Okay, I could keep going just like this and create all my guidelines. Let me show you one more way to do this though, that's available in all the recent versions of Photoshop. And it may be a little faster, especially for those of you using older versions who don't have the benefit of the little display that pops up and shows me my exact pixel value as I drag. So it turns out we can create these guidelines using the menu. And we do that by going to View, up in the menu area here at the top, and we come down to New Guide, and it's going to give us 2 options basically. We can choose the orientation. Remember, we're sticking with vertical, so that's good. And then we simply provide the position value. So I've created my first 4 guides. I know my 5th one has got to be at, let's see here, 290, so I'll type in 290 and hit OK, and there's my guide. So back up to View, down to New Guide, and I've created 290, so 350 comes next. Punch that in, and there's my next guide. Well, there's always a way to do things faster, and it turns out even this can be sped up a little bit by using a keyboard shortcut. And this is actually a good trick to know anytime you want to speed up something that doesn't already have a keyboard shortcut available. This is a really great flexible way in Photoshop to customize the interface. So you'll notice if I come to View, New Guide does not have a keyboard shortcut set up for it. And I know that because to the right here there's no key combination, as you'll notice on some of these others. Like if I wanted to see extras, I could do Command H, and as we saw earlier, rulers are Command R. Well, I have no keyboard shortcut for New Guide, but that doesn't mean I can't set one up. And in order to do that, all I need to do is come over to the Edit menu, and then come down to Keyboard Shortcuts. From here, I can choose my different menus, and I'm going to go back over to View because that's where the command I'm looking for lives. And I'm going to scroll down, and there's so many different things that can be mapped to keyboard shortcuts. But I'm going to come all the way down to New Guide. There it is. And to provide my shortcut, all I need to do is literally click in here and then type the shortcut. Literally type the shortcut that I want to use for this particular command. Now, the trick with this is because there are so many shortcuts already set up, it can be tricky to find one that's not in use. Now, I'm pretty sure if I do Command Shift 1, that is a available shortcut. So let me try that, Command Shift 1. Okay, and if you're on a PC, you could do Control Shift 1 to do that as well. I'll do Command Shift 1. I got no warning telling me that it was taken, but you'll notice if I get rid of that and do, say, Command R, which we know is taken, now I get a warning saying it's actually going to replace that old command. So I don't want to do that, so I'll undo that. And again, we'll do Command Shift 1. Control Shift 1 is a possibility if you're on a PC, although frankly, you could make this anything you want. Just make sure you remember how you've set up your shortcuts so you can easily get back to them. Okay, Command Shift 1. And we'll enter in there to save that and then click OK. Now that we're back in our document, we can Command Shift 1 and lo and behold, our New Guide dialog box opens up. We can set the position. We just did 350, so now we'll do 370 and we hit enter. And there's our guide. Command Shift 1 to create another guide. We'll do 430. And we'll just go through a couple of these so you can see how fast this process really can get. And again, I printed out the document with the ruler values, or the guide values I should say, so I have that right beside me here to speed this up, and I'll do one more. Okay, so once everything's done, we can zoom back out and we'll have ourselves the makings of a really good wireframe document with our 12 different columns, or if you wanted to, you could use a 16-column grid, no problem. Right about this time, it's probably a good idea to save the document, save all that hard work that we've put into it here. And in a follow-up lesson, we'll talk more about actually creating wireframes. And we'll see you then.